Move on to 6.2.
What would you like for
I'd
information?
like to know, you were waiting last time at a meeting, it was 100 years ago. That if, the one Clement ended up with that quarter with the big mound in it. you wanted
Mr.
to
Chairman,
know.
should we be using names?
Oh, the person of the one gravel pit,
It has a stockpile on it?
yeah, it has a stockpile on it. Yeah, there you go. Is it a done deal or not?
Not yet, that's,
But he was gonna, that property owner was going to sign off. I'd like you to look into it.
so the
before I-
property owner signed off allowing the access road and the stockpile to stay.
Yeah,
So it is in Alberta Environment and Parks hands right now. An inspector is coming out this spring to review.
my question would be, are they gonna look at both those?
They're looking at one application because that one's from 2000 and
No, not that one, the other one is the old one. The one with the dugout in the middle, the dugout that the cows drink out of. Yeah. That's the oldest.
I'm not sure which one you're talking about then.
Yeah, okay. I haven't got the legal land description, so.
I have 4 others that have been applied for that between Joel and myself and Brad Planner, we're gonna sit down because they had a meeting with Alberta Environment, I don't know, 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? So there's a new portal that we're gonna look into and reapply to get these things on their board in another
On the
way.
radar, good.
They don't have an application form, but we're gonna give them more information with what I've applied with to see if we can get them reviewed. And maybe one of those 4 is the one you're talking about.
The one that we've had on the books for 20 some years cost us $50,000. So I think if you look it up, you know. Moving on. You're gonna look into it. Go ahead.
I'd just like to have it clarified, like there are 2 piles on that one quarter, on the west quarter. One is with rocks and some sand in it, but I'd like to have it clarified between that, and then there's one also that's just got some little shavings, some rejects. Clarified between those, which piles they're gonna be staying.
The note I have on file says that those piles stay, and then there's a little goat trail that goes to the north of the first pile you're talking about and ends up on the south side of the other pile. The note says that he wants those to stay.
So long as it's clarified, because the one, they can utilize the material in it, the other one, for myself, I could never see any use ever being used of it, but that's my own opinion. As long as it's clarified that they stay, by all means.
That's good. So that they can give us a certificate with those piles on there, that's what I was wondering.
As the landowner has said, they want them to stay.
Okay.
If the rest is good,
Okay, good.
We'll get
That's what I
a-
wanted to know. Thank you.
certificate.
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, the quarry that you're asking about is Northwest 2841, 18
That's the one that the inspector's coming out in the spring.
And there's another one to the east, but it's the one north of the northeast.
Northeast of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been applied for. We're gonna reapply in a different way with that one. Yeah.
All right. So we're on it.
I'm still unsure of who's going to own which quarters in the end when the divorce is through. If it's through, we'll find out down the road on that.
I was just wanting for information what was going on with it.
Yeah, that one,
Keep it up on the burner instead of putting it on the back burner.
the inspector's coming out.
I think to go farther than that, I think in the end, she looks after both quarters, like she has the final say in both quarters, so it could be.
We're kind of getting into personal information.
I think what we should do is
Stay away from that.
receive it for information. Paul, you receive it for information?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Move on. 6.3, trees.
Yeah, I had a
Oh, you have a
question.
question on that?
Yeah, I had a ratepayer ask me if the county shelter belt program was still in place. I said it was, but I didn't have the details for them on the deadline for applying, because the county is still, they still can be ordered through the county and the county still pays the freight. But I was thinking we should put out the details of that. And at one time too, if they took the shelter belt planning program, they got a discount, I think, on their trees and stuff. Is that still in place? And if you can fill us in.
Yeah, like I said in my report, where I'm working on a different person to come out and be my tree expert. And then we'll have our workshop on planting, tree selection, pest and disease, and they can place their order for trees and get a discount. Anyone who places an order before the workshop but still attends gets a discount, and we still pay the freight.
So, but when is,
Remember the deadline, March 13, 15,
that's not
I
far.
remember what it is.
Quentin, so you have one person that want, or two, I guess, want the price on them.
So when they phone in, we tell them to go to treetime.ca, because that's where the trees are, that's where the prices are. They know what's left for selection.
Tree time. And you're gonna give me a number for that later. Go ahead. Yes.
At the ASB conference, they had a little booth set up about the federal government's lofty planting 2 billion trees. Has been lackluster at best. I may have cracked a couple jokes about how many years it took them to get the first 50,000 trees planted. But where I'm going with this is they have some funding associated with that program. Is there any avenue for us getting funding? We can help them out with our shelter belt planting programs. So they can actually get trees planted. Is there any access to funding where the people that are willing to go to this workshop and plant shelter belts could have the trees covered through a federal avenue?
Something good to look into.
They used to, and then they quit it, so I don't know. Quentin's gonna look into that, right?
Yeah.
Six-three was tree.
We're talking about just the cost of buying the tree, or are we talking like renting equipment to plant?
See what they have, see what they have.
I don't know what the options are. I mean,
He was
Yeah.
laughing too hard to actually get an answer.
You're gonna look into that and bring that information back, Quentin? I guess we're gonna move to, we don't really know, I think we pretty well went over the reports from presentations at the Ag Service Board for the rest of the two that weren't here.
Did we answer 6.4?
Right?
Yeah.
think we're equal to brushing.
I think we already went to their, 8.2 was actually, I had it down as a cement pit. Spring for 8.2 is spring. Okay, Quentin, or who asked? Huh?
Spring or trees.
Yeah, so that was mine,
I
Mr.
just got
Chairman.
trees down here.
So
Go ahead.
I just, in the spring program, I noticed you guys are out brushing trees now. Are you going after the trees that we killed or cutting down, slashing? I don't know how it is. And maybe Joe, or I know it's Public Works, but I know you coordinate with them as well. My question is, are we just selectively picking the trees that are dead, or are we going after, you know, my opinion about having trees in the ditch, and I just, if we're there, why are we not just cleaning everything out? And secondly, we put into the budget a small amount of money to do some custom brushing. Is that going to happen yet this year, or is that going to be the fall of 23? So two questions. And I don't know who
Go
wants
ahead
to
and answer the first one first, Quentin, and then, whether we're gonna do it in the fall or do it in the summer or do it whenever.
So thank you through the chair. So just now we're doing selective pruning of the larger trees so that we can go through and actually brush quicker, because they're the ones that slow us down as we're going through it with the brushing equipment. Dan and I were actually up in the county of, escape me again,
Vermilion.
Million River, yeah, we were up there last week, thank you, to look at the D3K2 Caterpillar. We went there and spoke with Marshall, who's the Director of Operations, and we also met with Finning, and we are hopefully working towards them donating it to us to try.
Okay.
So that's quite an interesting opportunity for us to work with a,
Is that a tracked machine?
it's a track machine. The review of it came back fairly negative, if I'm going to be honest. Both Finning and the county were both given as it's a nice machine to have to clean up, but it shouldn't be relied on as your main machine.
Okay, that's interesting.
I thought that was quite, as positive as negative information as we can.
Well, I mean, they're good, that's what you're looking for. You don't want everybody just to sugarcoat stuff and tell you. I want to know if something's not working.
But if the manufacturer and the user both point away, I guess.
The manufacturer said, he said it's a good machine. He said, but for what we're going to be using it for, he said it's probably too small, probably too light. It's well under 200 horsepower. It doesn't give the height for cutting and for brushing, so it's not the best. So anyway, the staff are out there just now actually, and they're doing some brushing in different areas. My intent in regards to the second part of the councillor's question would be, my intent now is to start going out with each councillor in their area. And we're looking to try and get as much brushing done at this side of the year as we can. So there's a bit of a rush on that just now. Dan and I, again, met with a couple of neighbouring properties or neighbouring counties to discuss who they use, who they utilise. But what I would like to do is get out with the councillors in the next week or two and actually go around the areas and start looking at some of the brushing. It's not a great deal of value in me telling you when I would like to brush. We can take a dart and throw it at the board and start brushing in some areas. So we may as well start allocating some of the areas we want to brush, and then we can actually tailor that a little bit more towards what type of brushing activities we're going to do in there and what we're going to work towards. So whether or not we use the D3 Cat when we get it in, or if we're going to use our own crews, or if we're going to get contractors in and pay for them. Now that the budget's been approved, we're very flexible with that. Quentin, Dan and myself are also looking at the spraying schedule, the grass cutting schedule and brushing schedule right now. That's going to be one of the key priorities, to start looking at what and how we're actually addressing this. And it's one of the points that Quentin and I were discussing yesterday, is how we're actually going to be approaching brushing and what we're going to be doing for a schedule and how we're going to be approaching that full scheme this year.
So, Mr. Chairman, if
You up first. I think you go first. Or you're up first? Okay, go ahead.
go ahead, Justin, I don't.
Well, what I was going to say was the height of and the reach of this machine. I think that was one of the big benefits to the way we structured our trial and bringing in some contractors, because a lot of that is in operations of the machine and learning some of those tips and tricks from the people that do it full time. So that machine is more than capable. I don't know the specifics of the one you looked at, but you can take down some big trees and then mulch them. But it's a lot in the operational kind of tips to this machine. And I think that's one of the big benefits of our prototype plan is getting these lessons learned from people that did it the hard way on their done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one, and please don't take this wrong towards staff. I don't think it's their situation. So Les and I, the other day, were traveling north. I can't remember where we were going, but we took the Tower Road and some of the staff were out there. And they're cutting trees and they're doing everything well, but they're cutting them and putting them on a trailer. And then I assume they took that trailer somewhere and disposed of it. I think we had borrowed the town's wood chipper. Is there any plans that we get a wood chipper? Because I'll be honest, I I looked at Les and I said, oh, I was just cringing. I said, that is the most inefficient way to deal with, and they were small, like they were,
Little guys.
2-inch round stuff, chip that, put it in a truck and give it to Quentin to spread out at the lake. I don't know. I'm just wondering if that's, like, where are we at on that? Is that something, like, isn't that a little bit, do you guys, I don't know, what do you guys feel? Does that not feel inefficient to you guys?
Yes, it does feel inefficient.
Okay.
I suppose it's a really easy position for me to sit back on some of these and criticize staff as well, especially when we're looking at some of the operations we've got. But what I will share with council is, and this might surprise you, but hopefully it brings a bit of a smile to your face. I actually have my artboard stuff in with me today, and I'm intending leaving this meeting and going out on site with the staff as well. There's a number of things that we're working through just now. Quentin and I discussed it yesterday. Cara and I and Dan all discussed some of the operations out there yesterday. Not just yesterday, but the last week or so. So I have actually got my ballistics and my chainsaw stuff with me to go out and to show them some of these kind of techniques of what we're discussing. Chipping is one of the things that we need to discuss, because it's not an efficient way of doing it at all. We should be chipping on site rather than dragging branches somewhere.
So is that, do we rent a chipper or what? I mean, I know the little one you can rent here in town is not a commercial unit, but can you even rent you see Davy Tree, or I don't know what they call them now, it's whatever they call the new guys. They came in front of my place and they went to town, and I was gone that day, and the next day you come back and they had a pile of stuff. I know where the wood chips went because I could use them. So, I mean, they're happy to drop them in my yard. I mean, but I know we use wood chips on a regular basis. So why would we not try to utilize this? I don't know. Maybe there's something I'm not seeing. I don't know.
Well, that's a fair point. I'll find out some more information about chipping, of where we're getting our chippings or what we're doing with the chipping material and get back to council.
Brendan, go ahead.
So in the past, we have borrowed the town of Stettler's chipper, which is a bigger unit. We gotta be careful because they have smaller trees than what we're doing. We could wreck it in a hurry, so we don't want to borrow it all the time, right? We had it in the budget, we removed it because we're looking at $50,000. It's another cost. It's something that could be benefited, or could be beneficial. The other thing we have to watch is what we're chipping and where we're putting those chips. If we get into areas where there's black knot, we start chipping black knot, we start spreading that around other trees, we're spreading black knot. And once black knot's been through a chipper, unless you disinfect all those teeth, you're spreading black knot. And there's other diseases too that we gotta watch. Is it beneficial? You bet. There's places we can use it.
But the chipping, like, the power company, when they chip that, they never haul the chips away, they put them right, they just leave them on the ground.
Lots of times, yeah, they do leave it as mulch in the ditch.
They just leave it, I think they did, probably 4 or 5 miles away from my place. They're gonna put in power line, and now they just chip them and just leave it away. And it eventually will. But
It's good for the soil, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. But, it's never, that way they leave that year going, really, you go on the grass, growing, take it,
Leaving it,
you don't know,
Larry.
there.
Just a couple questions or comments, but like Joel, I realize you want to go around with counselors to see what we think, but in the same sense, you've got big 6-wheeled machines running up and down the roads every day that should be able to tell you where we got troubles with trees. The same as it frustrates me that we have to record signs now, but your grader operator should be able to tell you some of the worst areas in every area that there is as far as stone drifting and things like that. So as far as getting that back to them, I don't get a lot of complaints about trees until people are trying to move their big headers down the road.
That's me too.
And
I put a complaint, we argue it every fall because that's not really our brushing time, and tell them to put it on their trailers, or we go out there and cut a couple trees down, or in some cases I maybe suggested that they have a saw to do it themselves.
if it's only one or two. But
It is one of those things that, there's certain areas that are more needy on trees. That's a great point, because our grader operators should have a list. If they cannot put their wing down to get rid of that snow,
yeah,
those should be our top priorities, because those are close enough for sightline issues, for drainage issues, for maintenance issues. That should be the priority list in all wards, as far as I'm concerned.
and from a snow basis, so the Ross Lake Road, I drove it one day and there really wasn't a problem with drifting snow because there's so many trees in that ditch. You know, I mean, I know from a road damage, et cetera, it might be an issue, but really from roads, it wasn't bad.
It was just the snow that we received.
Well, there's a lot of still trees in the fields too, like that pastures mostly carry trees too. But yeah,
Joe, I just want the bad corners in ours so that we don't have crash and burns there. And I'd like to be able to see those signs where they have the little arrow that goes around the corner, because it's all covered up with trees, so we'll do them first. And I only get, what, $7,000, so it'll do maybe a third of them, so.
I think the
and I
idea
know
was
it's
just
still
to,
do them, so.
no, I appreciate that. I think the idea was just to kind of involve council in some of the discussions as well. And if there was areas of concern, or there was an area specifically that you were thinking, like I said, we can throw a dart pretty much at any map and go at it. But it was really just to try and assist and see what council's thoughts about it.
for me, Joe, if you've got something in the guys have targeted, go for it. As much as I would love to go with you, you can. I have full confidence.
Perfect, thank you.
Your operators that probably know way better than me that what needs to be done.
So we've talked to tree thing, done. Good. Or you wanna?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good on that one.
Okay, all in favor, or you see what's right for me? Done. Move on. Year-to-date budget,
Overflowing.
year end.
So year end,
Financials, I guess it is.
we were a little over on advertising. We advertised a little more on things I didn't think we'd spend as much on. We're over on rodent control as a line, but it's in and out. What we brought in is what we sold within $500. Spent a little more on ASB expenses than I wanted to, but we had some rogue tree issues in Erskine we dealt with. And then building utilities, kind of forecast what your shop's gonna use in a year for utilities, it's a crapshoot, so I was 38% over budget there, but it looks like we were across the board in most departments, so. In the end, I ended up spending just shy of 90% of my budget last year. Overall.
You had a 10% surplus that you rolled over, is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think I rolled over that much. I rolled over a little bit of money for some brushing on some fence lines, but, there's two things I rolled over, brushing for fence lines and I don't recall what the other one was right now off the top of my head.
Pretty close anyhow. What was that tree make on?
Yeah, might have been.
I said, I think it was,
Still.
I think it was, we've got some fencing to do down on the old Czar quarter that Scott Bolt's now in. Is that,
There was that, and then, the piece that Kelly Armstrong rents, I think it's the northeast of 10. Between there and Louis Hermes, we're brushing there that we're hoping to get done last year. It's getting done this year, so I rolled that over.
Question on the utilities. I know that this had been discussed years ago at the county solar panels on our shop. Is there grant money available? Have we ever looked into this?
Looked into it once and it was really overfunded. So we were like at the bottom of the list. I don't know if they're still funding that. I don't know, like if they put that solar farm out there, they might shoot ours off. I don't know.
We're gonna put a solar farm on there.
Yeah, I mean, we had actually looked at using that other 40 acres to put a solar farm on. At one time, Atco had talked to us about that, but it fell by the wayside. Judging, I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
I remember, if I may, when we built the shop, we looked into it and it did not pencil out the cost and the return and the length of time. And it just, at that time, it wasn't feasible. And I know they've come a long way with solar and it might be far more efficient now. So it could be worth a relook, but it definitely was looked at before and it didn't work out.
Okay,
Les, I agree 100% on that, but probably the cost escalated. It's kind of as much as the savings too, maybe, so it would be a worth a relook, but the way everything else costs from solar is the same thing.
Yeah,
have a look at it if the government pays for it, maybe. Okay. Everybody good?
Now, can I just get notices
Go ahead.
about electric cars and things like that?
Electric car.
Not, those panels might charge one cars, what you're saying? Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
As long as it's a little one.
They don't go too far in cold weather.
Going to town and back.
You're gonna move that?
I'll move the year-end financial that we receive for information, I guess.
Receive for information. Anybody else? All in favor? Carried. Committee reports. I think we've been through all that.
So the last item then is next meeting. You guys are actually RMA for that meeting. Did Craig suggest the meeting date?
He's doing the 15th.
15th moved up with,
NBC, yes.
So everybody's got that changed in their calendar?
I think we already have that as 15.
We already have seen.
Just for NBC, ASB hasn't had a motion because you guys didn't have a meeting in January.
Are we in need of a meeting for Ag Service Board, or what's your thoughts?
Well, we got a guy coming with presentation.
That's actually the April meeting.
April.
I don't have any delegations for March yet.
I mean, if we don't have a lot on it's one that we could bypass if we don't have a lot on the go necessarily.
I do need to schedule an appeal hearing of council to hear a 545 appeal. So that's an enforcement order that's been appealed to you guys. So if you guys were to cancel the ASB meeting, I would probably schedule it for that morning.
What's everybody else feel?
So you're not having one in March then?
Well, it's just.
That's what
Or
we're talking
gonna
about.
still come in April, or I think it's go to April, Quentin, or later. Question?
Just with our Ag Service Board meeting schedules, this agenda that came out looked terrible. We've had a pretty good discussion because of additions to it. But if really the first agenda.
And you looked at it, I would have recommended that the meeting be canceled because of what was on it. And what we've talked about, a lot of things that need to be talked about as we're going into the production time of the year. I think there's things we should be talking about, and if there isn't, we should say that we're gonna start doing these meetings every second month or every third month, or something else, because like this agenda, I'm glad we had the conversations we've had today, but the agenda certainly didn't reflect it.
Put them on it.
But I do believe that's the chair's decision. I mean, that's that agenda prep situation. At that point, the chair should be deciding, listen, I look at this and go,
Not,
the MPC, as the chair of the MPC, the reason we have to have MPC is I mean, it's a light MPC as well going forward, but you have a timeline that those applications have to be heard in. If those timelines are not necessary, we can bypass those too if we have a light meeting, right? So on a go forward basis,
Well,
that's something that I think the chair should be doing.
I agree. But this one here, Quentin was going on holiday, so he sent it in. We never got together to make a agenda, but we will.
I wholeheartedly agree. If there's value in these meetings, great. But
If there isn't, don't have.
But if there isn't, I mean, it's, all of us can find other things to do. And we don't need to tie up 6 staff members to handle the bureaucratic side of these meetings. Like Joe's already talking about how he wants to go out with the slashing crew. Quentin's talked about the policies he wants to review. Like if there's not value, I'm sure our workers have far more, constructive things they can be accomplishing right now.
I think what was put on the agenda was it pretty well filled the morning up. And stuff that-
I don't know, I wanted to talk about it, but maybe it's not important. Anyhow, so we're gonna have one on April. We got it, you got it?
Can we get a motion to cancel the March meeting then?
I'll give you a motion that the March meeting will cancel and be back on April, what? 26, thank you.
Okay, Governor, no, that better. Oh, we got,
Sorry, Mr.
I
Chair.
already recognized it, but we got sideways.
So additions to agendas are great because they fill up your morning, but they're a nightmare for staff because we haven't researched the topic. So if there are items for the agenda, they should be on it and they should be researched. And so when you're speaking about them, Quentin's not running it out of his head. There's actual facts and data to back it up. Michelle will be doing the Ag Service packages with Quentin, I guess. So maybe she should put a notice out to all board members that if there's anything for the agenda to get it on, so we have the opportunity to research it. I mean, ASB going into the summer should be a busy time. We have spraying scheduled. We have private land spraying that people want. We've got a wormwood crisis out there. We've got new equipment coming on. Is it ready to go? Right? Like that's always gone through the whole winter. You know, April hits, are we ready to go, right? There's maps that could be produced for council to take a look at and approve. I just think we need to put, if that comes from agenda prep meetings or a little more forethought, but we need to make sure that the topics that you want to talk about are covered on the agenda and not additions to the agenda. So I'll work with Joe and Quentin to make sure that that happens.
That's the best scolding I've ever gotten.
It was spicy.
Thanks, Mom.
Go ahead, Ernie.
I'll have to agree, like, on something like that. So, like, when I first looked at it, it would look fairly short, and I said, holy Christ, this is gonna last for half an hour, sort of thing. But when I see another 6 additions coming from our board that in the morning, I find it's very much shame on us that we should have had these presented. Unless something come up immediately in here, it is that we should be hanging our heads a little bit here.
Absolutely. That's on us.
We'll get it ready next time.
Mr. Chairman, I think you need a vote on that though,
Go on what?
on the fact that we're moving it. We made the motion, but I don't think we voted.
Okay, who hasn't made a motion yet?
I made the motion.
Oh, you made it?
Yeah, we just haven't voted on it.
From,
So there isn't one in March.
okay, to April, what? 26. I got that wrote down.
All in favor? Carried. Moving on. Ladies, we've already talked about the ladies livestock clinic.
Was there a date on that one?
Yeah, March 2. At the time of doing this, we didn't have a date, but it is March 2.
in Delia,
in Delia.
Like March, like a couple days or a few days.
2 days from now.
Yeah, like 3 weeks or something.
The same night as the community service awards.
Same as a lot of things.
Community services on first.
Or no, that's
Second.
second, that's right.
And you'll be in Calgary.
First is the therapy.
And I got 4-H public speaking that night.
I had assumed you'd aged out of 4-H,
I
but
did,
I
I.
didn't learn nothing. I still
I
got
got
that.
back in.
No in-camera stuff. Need adjournment. Last adjournment.
I'll adjourn.
All in favor? Carried.